Welcome everyone. Uh, Good afternoon and welcome. I'm excited to welcome Antoine Valentone to our MSML Champions Lunch, Learn, and Lead virtual series. Antoine is joining us to share a conversation around organizational and personal alignment for success through the V2, is it MON or is it MOM?
Moms, V2
Um,
moms.
V2MOM framework, including how we can see each make it our own through creating a personal constitution, quote unquote, is what he could like to say. But I'd also just want to give Antoine an opportunity in the space to introduce himself and share a
Yep,
little bit about his background and tell us why this topic is meaningful for him
yep,
and why he felt to call and present it today. So, Antoine, thank you for being here and sharing your
yeah.
thoughts, and I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Carmelita. I'm excited to present to you all today. I recognize some of you and some of you are new faces, so it's a real honor, and I appreciate you carving out some time. I'm going to share my screen, walk you through some slides that I prepared, and then at the end, there'll be an interactive opportunity. And of course, I'll field questions and answers as best I can. Okay. So yeah, let me kind of share my screen.
Well, while you're doing that, you might want to
Mhm.
share when did you graduate with your MSML?
Yeah, so 2023, this summer will be 3 years that I walked.
Fantastic.
So yeah, and definitely one of the greatest things that I've ever done. I think I'm very, very proud of that. Um, so yeah, what am I presenting on? I'm presenting on something called the V2MOM's framework. So my agenda for today is to tackle these three items. First and foremost, I want to share with you my learnings on why some organizations succeed while others fail, and show how the V2MOM's framework can be used to help ensure you have organizational alignment, organizational health that leads to greater probability of success. And then finally, I'll put my sort of personal spin on the V2MOM's framework, um, and how you can sort of make it your own and use it as a tool for goal setting and achieving your dreams. Um, so first and foremost, I always like to start with a thank you for everybody joining and participating. I know everyone's very busy. There's probably a million other things you could be doing during this time. So my promise to you is try to repay you with some useful information, some key takeaways that you can action on. And if nothing else, hopefully this will be entertaining for you. So I'll probably weave in a few dad jokes along the way. So you walk away feeling like this was a good use of your time. um, yeah, so a little bit about me. I generally don't like to really talk much about what I've done or where I've been. Granted, I have many years of experience, I've done a lot of things, but I am not perfect. I make a lot of mistakes. I don't claim to have ever invented anything. Um, I do my best to learn every day, get better, and I share what I learned with others so that they can learn as well. Um, I think the most important thing, if you knew anything about me, is that I've been married for over 25 years. Personally, my why, the reason I like to get out of bed is I like to help people. It feels good to help people and to sort of pay it forward. And my personal values and family values are all around generally just trying to do good. Um, yeah. So, let's jump into the first agenda item as far as, yeah, why some organizations fail while others succeed. So I'm going to draw from a couple of books that many of you on this call probably already know about. First one being Pat Lencioni's book, um, regarding organizational health and alignment. Uh, One of the key takeaways from this particular book, and I realized I didn't put the title on this slide. So, see, there you go. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. Should have put the title on there. But nonetheless, you'll see that items 2, 3, and 4 sound familiar. It's all about clarity, clarity of purpose, uh, over communicating clarity and reinforcing clarity throughout an organization. In Pat's books, he talks about many different factors to sort of differentiate companies and leaders. And definitely this is one of the key takeaways. One of the key takeaways that I took from his book is organizational alignment through clarity and building a cohesive leadership team. And basically, the leadership team sets the tone for the entire organization. If you can have alignment at the leadership level, it should trickle down to everyone within the organization. If you have misalignment, confusion, inefficiency, it usually stems from a misalignment up at the top of the organization. And obviously, the CEO, being the chief executive officer, is ultimately responsible for that. Second book, oh, there it goes, is Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. A lot of great takeaways. Again, this one's probably familiar to many of you here as well through MSML and probably your own personal leadership journey. And the whole idea, and many different factors here, as far as again why some organizations succeed while others don't. The two biggest takeaways for me, and maybe you guys have heard this one, is on the left, getting the right people on the bus and making sure they're in the right seats. And generally, everybody agrees on where they're going on that bus, and they're not confused as to why they got on and where it's going and how they're going to get there. Um, and of course, level 5 leadership. This was one of the big takeaways for me. And I read this book early in sort of my leadership journey. Everything I learned at Pepperdine just sort of reinforced it. But um, developing the leaders of tomorrow and sharing again what we know with others so that they can grow and getting out of people's way, setting them up for success, not holding people back for fear of losing them, etc. So summarizing those, to me, ultimately, it boiled down to these two things. Again, answering the question as far as like why some organizations succeed while others don't. It's two things: organizational health and organizational alignment. And I'll define, these in a little bit in more detail. But the most simple way I look at it is, regardless of size of organization, it's really these two things: organizational health and organizational alignment. But it's elusive. And how do you create it? How do you achieve it? Why does it matter? So here's another one you guys probably recognize: Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So this was a game changer for me when I stumbled upon this. Again, sort of early in my leadership journey, I was struggling with questions I couldn't find the answers to. I was trying to understand myself as a person. Why did I say and do the things that I did? What was sort of driving my behavior? And then as a leader, I wanted to understand what was driving my teams. Why were they saying and doing the things that they were doing? And ultimately, this was a game changer for me because it just sort of explained everything. And understanding that, everyone can be at a different stage in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And the goal is obviously to be at our best as we try to address as many of our needs as possible, to free up our mind to be the most creative, the most sort of innovative, the most spontaneous. So, like when I saw this, I understood, like for you sports fans out there, you might hear athletes talk about being in the zone. Michael Jordan, Steph Curry, who's one of the greatest free throw shooters of all time. They say that the bucket looks like it's the size of, like a manhole or something. Like they're in the zone. They're not thinking about physical safety or emotional safety. They're not worried about putting food on their table. They're just focused on one purpose, and that's being the best possible athlete they can. And uh, without uh, those sort of burdens or concerns, they're able to achieve their maximum potential, right? So then, building on this, somebody sort of layered Maslow's hierarchy of needs over sort of how it pertains to employee engagement, and how, if while people might not be professional athletes, if they're working, they're within an organization. And can we as leaders create an organization that, again, frees up their minds about things like pay, about healthcare, about time off, etc. Making sure we check all those boxes, because if we do that successfully as leaders and organizationally, people will be more engaged. And when people are more engaged at work, they generally produce better outcomes. So it's up to us as leaders within organizations to create this culture, to create this environment where we're checking as many of the boxes as possible, so that each employee can just focus on the mission, the vision, and achieving sort of the organizational goals, right? So it has an impact on engagement. And as we know from our MSML learnings, and we can't expect people just to follow orders because of authority. We want to be inspirational leaders. We want to get people bought in. We want to get people doing things because they want to do it, not because they feel they have to or they're being told to do it. So again, how do we achieve organizational health and alignment? So I'm going to present to you now, not the way, but I'm going to present a way that I learned during my time at Salesforce. So V2MOM's is an acronym that stands for Vision, Values, Methods, Obstacles, and Metrics. Now, just out of curiosity, does anybody already know about this? Has anybody ever heard about the V2MOM's framework before? Okay, cool. So score 1 point for I'm telling you something you don't already know. Now, you're probably familiar with some other framework that accomplishes the same things. It's just not called V2MOM's. This is Mark Benioff's sort of brainchild at Salesforce that he implemented. At Google, I've heard they've had something called BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals. There's different names for it, but essentially, this is what the V2MOM's framework stands for. And sort of defining or explaining a little bit more what each of these mean. The idea is, okay, hey, as the CEO of an organization, you want to make sure you've clearly defined and communicated to your leadership team these things. And vision is, hey, why are we here? What do we want to do? Why does this company exist? And the answer shouldn't be, by the way, to make money. We all know we need to make money. We all know that we need to pay bills, of course. And I'm all for people making as much money as they want and they need, whatever. But ideally, that's not why you get out of bed. Making money is an outcome of doing something ideally that you really love, that you're really passionate about, and ideally does good for the world. And people benefit from those goods or services. And Simon Sinek talks a lot about this in his books. The values, what's important about that vision of yours. And I don't want to just read these to you, but ultimately methods is, okay, well, how are we going to make these things happen, right? We can't just say we want to get to the side of the ocean, how are we going to get there? What are the steps we're going to take? And hey, what are some of those things that are going to potentially stand in our way or prevent us from getting there? Let's be aware of those if we can and prepare for them. And then finally, metrics. Well, how the hell do we know when we've gotten there? How do we know what success is? How are we defining it? Is it measurable or not? So ultimately, V2MOM's is meant to address these things. Again, provide the clarity of purpose for everyone. Going back to vision, by the way, I know we use North Star a lot in the MSML learnings. Vision is ultimately meant to be that North Star. And again, coincidentally, I remember when I was implementing V2MOM's, this was before MSML, I remember saying and explaining it to people and saying, V2MOM's is like when you're lost at sea and you're trying to find your way home. It's your North Star. And then ultimately, years later, when I heard the same thing in my MSML journey, I felt validated. I was like, oh yeah, I'm not crazy. This is true. It makes sense. But ultimately, it's meant to address those issues I talked about earlier, as far as, again, how do we achieve organizational health? How do we provide clarity? How do we create the best possible environment for alignment that leads to success. V2MOM's is one way to do that. And it does scale. And I'll show you how here in a second. But regardless of size of organization, uh, you can use it for very small, and it grows as your organization grows. Now, what I wanted to sort of demonstrate here is when I say organizational alignment and how V2MOM sort of fits, or like the process, it's meant to help ensure you have clarity of purpose, organizational alignment, vertically as well as horizontally. So, for example, when I was at Salesforce, and frankly at any company, ideally the way it works is the CEO has a vision, and again has values. The CEO writes the sort of first layer of the V2MOMs and shares that with the executive team. And here's just an example of, an organization: sales, marketing, customer success, project engineers. There's other teams, right? But the idea is the CEO shares his or hers V2MOMs with the leadership team, the chief, the C-suite, right? And says, okay, leaders, now go and create your organization, your departmental V2MOMs. And they have to align with mine. And I want you to share those amongst each other and then come back to me when you have alignment. So the chief sales officer, the chief marketing officer, the chief customer officer, everybody goes and writes their V2MOMs by themselves and then presents to each other. And there's supposed to be the sort of accountability there where we're confirming, do we have vertical alignment? Does this align with what we heard from Mark Benioff, the CEO, or not? And does this align with my organizational goals, my V2MOMs? Maybe some of you have experienced one of the biggest reasons companies fail is silos get built. And you have a lot of chaos and finger pointing. Sales blames marketing. The marketings are, I was going to say SHIT, but I won't. Or poo-poo, but marketing says sales doesn't know how to close. Customer success says that the product team is not building a stable product. Everybody points their fingers at each other because that's the easy thing to do, right? The hard thing to do is look in the mirror and say, no, my team dropped the ball. We failed. We could have succeeded, but we didn't do what we needed to do. That's the hard thing to do because, heck, these days it can mean your job, right? So obviously there's always the risk of failure, but you significantly reduce the risk of failure if you have that alignment, again, vertically and horizontally. So this should then trickle down from the C-suite to the senior VPs. They repeat the process. The VPs, the senior directors, the directors. It's supposed to trickle. Everyone at Salesforce had to do V2MOMs. Everyone, including the individual contributors. The whole idea was, hey, it starts at the top. If we all follow this process, we should significantly increase the likelihood of our organization succeeding because we have alignment and we have clarity of purpose. We're all sort of on the same page, So let me just pause there. Again, I'm going to take questions formally at the end, but I feel like I should stop for a second. Any questions, comments so far?
I'll jump in. I mean, Anton, how did they kind of indoctrinate this within the organization? I know as I think about my journey, and these are certainly valuable, missions and purpose and values to
Yeah.
subscribe to, but the tough part can be getting people on board.
Yes. Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Not easy. So it was definitely, there was a process for it. And I'll show you some examples here in a second. And look, I'll be perfectly transparent. When I was at Salesforce, this was 2011. I did the process, but I didn't buy in. But that wasn't their fault. That was my fault. I wasn't ready. I wasn't where I needed to be as a leader. And I was like, God, what a waste of time. This is so stupid. Like, leave me alone. I just want to do all my thing. Like, again, I wasn't the right person. So yeah, sure. Having this framework helps. Indeed, Marty, it's easier said than done. Um, you could run into people again that do the process, um, but don't really buy in. And then that's the people we have to identify as leaders, unfortunately, and sometimes it means maybe they're not the right person. Um, but let me show you a couple of the examples, by the way, and just give it a little bit more clarity. So just Salesforce, by the way, I've been talking about it. I don't want to assume you know what or who Salesforce is. So Salesforce was founded by Mark Benioff. Mark Benioff worked at Oracle under Larry Ellison here in San Francisco, California, Bay Area. And he was really successful at Oracle. Obviously, he could have stayed there, but he wanted to do his own thing. He created Salesforce, which was a customer relationship management or CRM software solution. And has gone on to grow considerably, many acquisitions, and is a lot more than what originally it started out as. Here is an example, and I think it's in the link I sent out earlier today. This was Mark Benioff's Salesforce first ever V2MOM's. Apparently, he and a few of his colleagues decided to leave Oracle and start Salesforce, drew this up. So again, I don't know if he invented it or if he got it from somewhere else. I certainly didn't invent it. I'm just sharing with you what I learned there, that this was the first sort of draft of Salesforce's V2MOM's. And you'll notice it's not really that heavyweight. It's pretty straightforward. It's basic. It's not a lot of words. It's not too dense. I mean, a couple of things that stand out to me is at the bottom, one of the measures is, well, they'll know if they've accomplished their vision if they're all rich. And again, like, I don't have a problem with that. Again, I respect that everybody needs to make money. My personal sort of take on the whole thing about money is, look, I can say that I've been materialistic in my life for sure. I've done things for money, and sometimes wanting a materialistic thing or gathering wealth can be a strong motivator to go out and hustle and work hard. So no disrespect there. The only thing I would share is that what I learned eventually is, in the absence of somebody to share it with, um, it's really empty. So I would say, sure, if you want to pursue wealth and materialistic things, I guess that's okay. But make sure you have friends and family and people that love you and that you love and you can share those things with. And you can sort of celebrate that. And of course, be altruistic and give to those that aren't able to get for themselves. But anyway, coming back to this, here is, so again, this is sort of further illustrate V2MOM's. When I worked at Salesforce, this was sort of the org chart. I reported to this guy, Eric, and this is sort of, he owned what was called the Customers for Life team. Customers for Life consisted of, in blue, there was the sort of onboarding team that was led by this guy, Dave. Then there was the customer success manager, was led by Lisa. Ginger owned like the tech support team. And then all the way over there on the right, no picture of me, but I owned sort of the renewals team. And so Eric reported to Mark Benioff, right? He drafted his V2MOM's, Eric did, and they were aligned with Mark's. And then he shared that with Dave, Lisa, Ginger, and I. And then again, we had to go write our own V2MOM's for our teams that we would again share amongst the Customers for Life team and with Eric. And then assuming they approved, pushed it down to everybody on the team. And again, despite going through the process, Marty, again, I did not buy in. Again, that was my fault though. I just didn't get it. I wasn't in the right place mentally as a leader.
Yeah, it just takes some, maturity and
Yeah.
seeing it to believe it sometimes.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And then so not surprisingly, I was part of a reorg about a year and a half later. Reorg is code for we don't want you anymore because you don't fit in. You're not buying in. You're not the right person for this bus. Okay. And that was a hard lesson for me to learn, you know? But it had to happen in order for me to change and to look internally. Um, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But so here's, again, that same team. This was the vision and values that was drafted by Eric, the guy that I reported to. So again, I'm just showing this as examples. I showed you Mark Benioff's Salesforce when they first started. I don't remember what year that was, but this was 2011, and this was at the uh, chief customer officer or level. And then look at the methods. So there's quite a few. These were the actual methods that we came up with, or that Eric did. Here's the sort of metrics. And then did I miss the obstacles? I left the obstacles out, but there was definitely obstacles there. Okay, and then here's the scorecard. Here's how we were supposed to define. So, I mean, the first thing that jumps out at me, this is a lot heavier than this. I have a very simple brain. I like to keep things simple. Personally, this was a bit too much, and I won't say that's why I didn't buy in, but what I did learn from that experience was after I left, or I was excused, I ended up going to this company called Showpad, much smaller, and yeah, I became the chief customer officer at this company. Again, it's a matter of scale. Obviously, this company I think was doing like $5 million a year in revenue. I was tasked with basically being their version of Eric at Salesforce. I owned onboarding, I owned tech support, I owned renewals, I owned customer success managers, and I was like, hey, I believe that we need to create organizational health and alignment, but how do we do that? Oh yeah, I bet that V2MOM's thing might be like one good way to help do that. So I went ahead and got the CEO and the other leadership team to buy into, hey, let's use this framework. And this company was founded in Belgium, and I'm really grateful for them giving me my first VP role. Um, you know, they liked the tattoos, they liked my style. It was a great time for me as a leader, and wearing sort of that hat, and then having to implement this and hire the leaders and try to drive that alignment. This was a really valuable tool for me, and I've been at 4 or 5 other companies since this one, and I've implemented V2MOM's at every single one. And more often than not, it's been well received because really, and I think a lot of it is that it was just smaller companies that I was working for. We had nothing. We didn't have anything. We just had a CEO telling each leader what they were responsible for, and the CEO maybe didn't buy into the notion of, hey, maybe we should be aligned here. Maybe we should be talking to each other and tracking metrics and making sure we're winning as a team. That was one of the big takeaways for me, by the way. It's not documented on any of these slides that I shared, but one of the big things I learned about at Salesforce was the whole concept of winning as a team. And I am a firm believer in that, yeah, the best teams succeed when everybody does their job and understands the impact it has on their teammates, and that we are all in this together, and that we all want to have that alignment in order for us to succeed. So it does me no good if I succeed in my department and my teammates are failing. That's no good. I can't or shouldn't celebrate that. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've seen marketing stand up, like at a quarterly business review, and tout their great success achieving their marketing metrics. But then the sales leader will stand up and talk about how they missed, and we're not achieving our sales targets and all this stuff. So it's like, yeah, how can I sit there and celebrate if my teammates are failing? Again, ideally all of us succeed for the company to succeed. So finally, how do you sort of make this your own? So again, I didn't invent V2MOM's. I'm just sharing with you what I learned, I've implemented. I will say I put sort of my personal touch, my personal spin on V2MOM's, based on what I learned in readings and just experience. I wanted to add mission. So not just a vision, but having a mission. What I learned from just reading a lot of books was that there's a difference between a vision and a mission. You don't have to have both. Again, this is just my personal sort of layer that I added to it. Was I think there is a difference between a vision and a mission, and that we can incorporate this into our process to provide further clarity. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So again, here, vision, remember, is why do you exist? Again, if you're a fan of Simon Sinek, what's your why? And then mission, again, my personal sort of addition here, my personal touch on this is, okay, well, what do you hope to accomplish with your existence? And I'll give you a couple of examples of what I mean by that. So SpaceX, one of Elon Musk's companies, if you go to the website, this is their vision, all right? To make humanity multiplanetary species, revolutionizing space technology, yada, yada, yada. So that's the vision. And the vision, if you get it right, shouldn't change. By the way, I wanted to go back to this real quick. Vision, mission, and values, or vision and values, excuse me, ideally doesn't change. Mission can change, as will the others, potentially, depending on where you're at on your journey. But so again, coming back to this, the vision is help make humanity a multiplanetary species. Okay, that's the vision. So what's the mission? Well, the one we hear most about is, let's colonize Mars. That's the one that he's been saying for a long time. Now, recently they changed that, and we're going to do apparently a base on the moon. So the current mission is, again, the vision is make humanity a multiplanetary species. What's the mission? Let's get that base on the moon. Why? Because once we get the base on the moon, it's easier to get from the moon to Mars. The vision hasn't changed. The mission has changed. So right now it's, number one, let's get to the moon. Once we get to the moon, are we done? Is the company going to fold up shop? No. The mission then becomes, let's get to Mars, because our vision is, let's make humanity a multiplanetary species. Once we get to Mars, is SpaceX going to close up shop? Are they done? No. Then it's going to be probably Jupiter or Venus or Pluto eventually. I don't know. But this is an example. If you're a Star Trek fan, I grew up watching Star Trek. Remember Kirk, boldly go where no man has ever gone before, right? They were going everywhere because that was their vision. They would travel as many planets as possible. So anyway, that's my personal sort of spin on V2MOM's. If you want to implement this framework at your organization, you don't have to add in the mission if you don't feel it's necessary. It's personal preference, I think. So now, finally, coming to maybe an interactive opportunity is, again, I mentioned earlier at Salesforce, V2MOM's was an activity that everyone within an organization had to complete, not just the leadership team, but also the individual contributors. And again, you were seeking that alignment. Managers had to sort of vet their teams, right? And make sure, hey, are we aligned? Do we have the right people? So another sort of personal sort of way I've used this is, again, I mentioned I like to help people. I do believe in developing future leaders. I really am passionate about helping people achieve their dreams and their goals. And we know that goal setting is one way to help make your dreams come true, become a reality. So I've done this with a few people where I just call this, hey, let's write what I call your personal constitution. Okay, so this isn't necessarily about your job. Um, or an exercise that you should take because your organization's asking. This is about, hey, whether you work for someone or not, if you're seeking clarity of purpose, again, why do I exist? Why do I get out of bed? Or what is it that I want to accomplish? Maybe I can answer that question, but I don't know how I'm going to get there. Uh, writing, answering these questions is a great way to help get you there. So, again, I've done this with some employees that were just looking to develop themselves as leaders. My oldest son is 17. He's about to turn 18 and graduate high school. And I remember being his age, and he doesn't know where he wants to go. He doesn't know what he wants to do. And I've told him, I said, hey, man, that's okay. I didn't know when I was your age either. I understand. I said, here's a tip. I said, you know, for starters, get a pen and paper and write down your ideas, write down your thoughts. Like, start with your values. What are your values? How do you see yourself? And if we asked your friends, how would they explain who you are? And would there be alignment there? You know, if you think you're this amazing person and then we polled your friends and they said, oh, maybe he's not so great. Is that a good thing or not? And oftentimes your values will define or help sort of shape your vision. So anyway, this is my personal sort of final touch here. I just wanted to share this with you all. Again, it's just a framework. Again, I'm not saying it's the definitive way. I'm not saying it's the only way. I'm just saying it's a way to sort of look at personal sort of success, how to increase the odds of achieving your vision, your vision, your dreams, your goals. Ideally, if you do this with pen and paper. There's something about writing on pen and paper, and it's one of the biggest takeaways that I took from MSML. Um, I'm not a, I don't like writing. I'm more of a verbal communicator, and I did learn the value of journaling and writing things down. And somehow, taking your thoughts and ideas and writing them on a pen and paper just helps make it more real. It brings it into the world. Uh, if you want to do this on your computer, Excel, Word doc, whatever, but just document this. And it really is, I feel, a tool that can help you get to not just your current mission, but every mission that you're faced with on your journey towards your vision. And whatever that vision is up to you. So that's everything that I wanted to share today. I really do appreciate everybody listening. Hey, I'm on LinkedIn, so if we're not already connected, please let's connect. I do have this fledgling little podcast where I like to talk to people and ask questions so I can learn. If you want to share your story, I am open to listening to it. If you want to work alongside me and write your personal constitution, I'd love to do it with you. And I will be at Epic Impact Society later this month, first time, and I'm looking forward to seeing any of you that are there. So with that, yeah, I'll stop sharing and open up for questions or comments.
Great job, Antoine.
Great job, Antoine.
Does anybody have any questions? I don't know if it's a question or more of a comment or more of a expanding on your concept, but as you were talking through the V2MOM's, it connected for me from the MSML journey, the STAR model.
Yeah.
And so would you say, do you see like the STAR model being more of an assessment of that alignment, and then the V2MOM's being, how you execute that, either in your organization or, in your own personal life? Is that how you would frame it?
Yeah, thanks for reminding me. You're right. I remember when I learned about the STAR model, I had never heard about it, but I did see some parallels with V2MOM's. So again, another example of how you've probably seen something like this just called something else. So I would say either or, not necessarily both. Again, my personal style as a leader is I like to keep things simple. I like to keep things lightweight. I found it, whichever works for you ultimately, I think is good. It's better than none. Jennifer?
Hi, Antoine. Thank you. I guess I have a two-part question. So I myself am starting to think about my own personal constitution, I guess, in a way. So when you first created yours, did it feel really clear right away, or did it evolve over time?
My personal constitution?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was clear only because I spent so much time thinking about it. I spent just an insane amount of time, and I needed to, when I started writing it, it just sort of flowed. It just sort of poured out of me. Um, and again, it just helped make it more real by actually putting it on paper. Um, but again, I realized that it may be a struggle for some because maybe they're not sure. Um, so it is a way to help define or help give you that clarity just by answering those questions. Yeah. Um,
Okay. Okay,
was there a
so
follow up?
yeah,
Go ahead.
so going back to the V2 mom model, and I guess when you were creating your own personal constitution, did you notice or do you notice that there are parts of that model that people tend to rush through but actually deserve more attention?
Yeah, I would say the methods. How do you make your vision come true? And also the obstacles. A lot of times we have blind spots. We're not aware of the things that might get in our way or sort of derail us, or maybe we're a little delusional. We think it's just going to be a cakewalk.
Hmm.
I would say those are the two, the methods. So it's not enough to say, um, again, I want to achieve X, Y, Z. It's like, okay, well, what are the practical steps you're going to take? How are you going to make it real? What are the actual tactics? Like, okay, I want to be healthier. I want to achieve I want my maximum health. Okay, well, what are the methods? Well, I need to do resistance training. I'm going to get up in the morning. I'm going to work out. I'm going to be mindful of my nutrition. I'm going to eat the right foods, etc. I'm going to work on my sleep, etc. So, yeah, I would say those are the two probably that require more thought than probably people would think. And by the way, one thing I wanted to add that I forgot to hit on, if you go to most companies' websites, you will see the vision and the values usually around in the career page or on the career page. And why is that? Well, hey, if you're the CEO of a company and you want to attract others to come work for you, hopefully they've looked at your vision and your values and say, hey, that's for me. I'm aligned. That's who I am too. I want to be there with other people that share. So oftentimes when you see people underperform and don't succeed, like me when I was at Salesforce, I wasn't aligned. And it didn't come out in the interview process. So as a hiring manager, it's one of the first questions I ask. And I want to identify right away, do you even know what product we sell? Do you know what our vision is? And do you know what our values had? Did you bother to look? I mean, for all you know, we're building bombs here, we're this awful group of people that are looking to do harm. Wouldn't you want to know that before? And sadly, some people, and I understand, it's like, hey, it's hard times. I need a job. I don't care what the company is. I don't care what the values is. I just need a paycheck. I understand that. And I will say, again, do what you have to do to take care of yourself. I would just say, if you want to be the happiest in life, you want to be fulfilled, try not to do something just because it's a paycheck if you don't have to. I respect that some people have to. I get it. But ideally, it's like, no, my priority is I want to find a product I can buy into, I believe in. There's a vision that I buy into, and I share the values. And I know if I join this organization, I'm going to be at my best because I'm amongst others that ideally have bought into this vision, they've made it their own, and that have common values. So just I wanted to add that as far as if you're a hiring manager, if you're not asking those questions, maybe consider it. to help ensure that a candidate you're talking to is going to be successful if you have that alignment. And then obviously if you're interviewing, maybe look at the vision and the values and make sure you're aligned. And then, yeah, if somebody's not succeeding, it probably has something to do with a misalignment there. Um, and and the last thing I'll say is, if you're working somewhere and you're not happy, and it turns out it's because of the misalignment, again, I understand people have to make money, but sometimes you might be happier if you just leave and you're not part of that any longer. And it is scary. It is risky. I understand. There's a worry, will I have enough? Will I get a job soon enough? I need to pay the bills. I respect that. I would say through my personal experience, I have faith that when you follow your heart, despite sort of the risks, the universe has a way of aligning itself for you. And you can overcome. Chances are, if you make the decision, you will be rewarded. You will be happier ultimately if you make the switch. If you're not happy, life is too short. Don't stay somewhere where you're not happy and there's misalignment between your values and the company. So anyway, sorry, I just want to make sure I shared that as well, before I forgot. Any other questions or comments? Yes.
I just wanted to comment. Really, oh, sorry, Allison. I just jumped in.
Yeah, I was looking at Annalise. Anyway, go ahead.
Really great presentation. Definitely aligns really well with me and what I'm doing as far as my practitioner life. As I lead a team, and I appreciated this mostly because I tend to lean towards SMART goals when we're setting up our goals and looking at budgets and how we want to get from A to Z. But I think that sometimes you need to, this is for you, Professor Ralph, disrupt things and try something different. So I appreciate the V2MOM. And it's funny because I hadn't had a chance to, we mentioned this at the beginning, to go into Salesforce and that document you shared. And I'm like, what does Salesforce have to do with moms? I didn't, I didn't look at it as an acronym. It's like V2MOM's. It's like something that like energizes moms. What's this about? So I love it. I appreciate the acronym and appreciate the vision and the mission that you provided through this presentation. So really great. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And yeah, I shared the link so you guys could do a little bit of homework on your own if you're interested. Allison.
I think Meredith's first, so I'll let her go.
Yeah, Meredith is
Oh,
next.
sorry. I didn't say. Okay. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, Allison, you go ahead because mine's, yeah, you first. Go ahead, Allison.
Go, Allison.
Okay. I appreciate that. So I wanted to piggyback off of your statement about being a hiring manager. And so I was wondering if there's any other ways you incorporate this into your interviewing, where I know you gave the example of, hey, do you know what our values are and what our vision is? But do you kind of put it back on any candidates and say, hey, what do you want, or what are your values? And does this model or framework incorporate into your hiring in any other ways?
Yeah, indeed. One of my follow-up questions is wanting to gain insight regarding who is this person, and I'll ask for examples. So this open-ended question that I ask to figure that out, or to try to figure that out, I'll say, what I experienced through a lot of interviews was very one-sided. The hiring manager would just ask me a bunch of questions, but never give me an opportunity to ask anything, right? So two things. I always give ample time for the candidate to ask questions, and you'll learn a lot from their questions as far as what they're interested in. If they're asking about how many days off, the comp, the benefits, like, again, those things are important, but it just gives you a sense of what they're thinking about. But then here's the one very important question I always ask. Hey, what didn't I ask you about that you think is important for me to know about you? What differentiates you from any other candidate? And you'd be surprised how stumped people get when I ask that question. I mean, I'm teeing it up for them. It's a layup. It's like, hey, give me your best. Like, tell me. I'll even here another variation of that is, what are you most proud of in your career that you've accomplished? Be specific, or personally, and it just gives them an opportunity. It's like, oh, thank you so much for asking me. There is this one thing I want to share. But normally, again, if you don't give them the opportunity, you'll never hear it. So again, a valuable lesson. By the way, I was so bad at interviewing for so long. I apologize to the poor people that had to suffer through my interviews. um, and I got better at it over time by incorporating those layers. Yeah, giving people enough time to ask their questions. You can learn from them. They appreciate, and then it just allows them to uh, share something that they might not have had the opportunity to share had they not been given that open-ended question. Yeah, Meredith, I'm so sorry that I missed your hand is hidden to me by the wave.
Yeah, just
Go
real quick,
ahead.
Meredith. After Meredith, I want to be mindful of time. We've got
Yeah,
5 minutes,
yeah.
but I want to give some announcements. So,
Okay.
so after Meredith, I'll go ahead
Yeah.
and
It's
chime in.
okay. Antoine, I'll email you. It's all right.
No, go for it. We have plenty of time.
I'm on the edge of a deep dive into identity development, specifically within adolescence. Y'all know me, that's my background, and that's kind of where I'm working towards candidacy. And so some of the things that you were sharing in terms of clarity and clarity of purpose were really rising for me. Wondering if in the next minute you could talk about from, and I know with adults too, right? The concept of identity synthesis and cohesion and coherence and all that we're supposed to be like strong and like developed in that. Wondering from the V2 mom perspective, if you could share a little bit about where identity falls, whether that's individual identity, social identity, org identity, in 1 minute.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's the values. I think what's your values that you cherish says a lot about who you are. And for me, identity ultimately is about, hey, we're all human beings. We're all human beings. We're imperfect. And hopefully we try to do more good than harm in this world. And I think whatever values you choose to sort of hold near to your heart sort of identifies who you are on a daily basis. Am I a good person ultimately, or am I maybe a person that could do better? Yeah. Yeah, that's my short answer, but happy to explore with you or anyone else, again, offline. Carmelita and everyone, thank you so much for indulging me. I always feel a little bit narcissistic when I talk so much, but hopefully you walk away feeling like this was a good use of your time. So thank you. Very grateful.
Fabulous content, Antoine, and great delivery. We appreciate you taking the time to share, your insight and your knowledge and what you learned at Salesforce and then crafting it into your own personal constitution. That's fantastic. And so thank you so much for everybody that joined today and taking time out of your day to learn from everyone and sharing your questions and your insights is always helpful. I am still seeking